garden class. It is 9:30. We're starting on time. This is an energetic crowd. Right on. Yeah, it's good. So flowers. This is kind of flower class. And we're going to skew over towards peonies specifically. So perennials, things that come back year after year. So perennials, you plant it once and you're done. For myself, I tend to anchor my gardens with perennials. So I only have to do it once. And then I accessorize with some annuals, flowers that come up and they're spectacular for a year and then they die in the winter. So I'll tell you how to blend the two together. Hi, my name's Ken. I'm the garden center owner, along with my wife and my daughter, who you'll see here running the board. She just took off because they need another one of these, I think. So she's grabbed me another one. So this is our 62nd year being open at Waters Garden Center here in Prescott, Arizona. We're the very first garden center to open in northern Arizona. So Harold Waters, Lisa's father, started the business back in 1962. He'd been landscaping through the 50s, and the rumor is he had a station wagon and a shovel, and he borrowed a wheelbarrow, and he started his landscape company. I don't know. He was a good storyteller, too, so I think some of that's true, but that's kind of how the family kind of started. So we've been here for a long time. We've learned a few things, garden-wise, and for myself, I would classify myself as a flower gardener. I do vegetables, I do trees and shrubs and other stuff, but trees you do it once and you're done, unless it dies or something happens, but it's once every decade or two, you replace a tree. It's hard to garden with trees. Shrubs are kind of the same way. Veggies are just April, May, and June, and then you're done. Flowers are something you can do year-round. So 12 months out of the year, you can have blooms every month out of the year here because we're this temperate four-season climate. That's why I like it, because it just helps me to always have something coming up in bloom, fragrance, butterflies. There's a lot to flowers. So I would classify myself as, if I were to say just one thing, a flower grower. And so I've got a lot of things in the ground. Most of my things are in raised beds or containers. We have over 50 pots. I guess you can't use the word pot anymore. Containers. So not edible, just containers that we grow into. We have big swooping patios, a lot of hardscape. And so my containers tend to add color. It's a piece of art that you grow plants in. So we do a lot of that. We blend the two things together. So today, peonies. So this is a peony. There's two main types of peonies. There's English peony. That's one your grandparents grew. That's this one. Thank you. And then there's Ito peonies, which are the ones on steroids. Do we have any Itos? Are there? You bought them all, didn't you? Yeah, there we go. We'll have more. So Ito peonies are, you're grafting an English peony onto a tree peony root. Tree peonies don't grow here. It's too windy, too cold. But if you graft English peony onto a tree peony root, you get this ginormous peony. It stands up this tall. Flowers as big as your hand, and you get the funky colors. English peonies, they'll be more pom-pom. They're about this big, and you can see the buds already forming right here. So this is kind of what they look like in the garden right now as we speak. I can share the secret. No matter what type of peony you grow, the secret is drainage. The roots, if you're going to kill a peony, it will be the roots stay too wet. And it's got a real big fleshy root mass, kind of like a rhubarb, or it's got real big fleshy. If it starts to rot, there's no stopping it. It just continues. It's like a cancer. It keeps rotting. And so the secret with peonies, make sure the soil is rich and drains. And this is personal experience. I've killed several. That's the curse of being a garden center owner. You can kill more plants. You can, oh, well, I got it at cost. No, it actually costs more because you're killing more things. It just is painful. And it's not the cost of the plant. It's the work it takes to put a hole in the ground. That's the hard part. And so I'm up in Eagle Ridge, up above the high school, Prescott Lakes area, above the high school. And so that soil is really, really hard. It's clay soil, and there's rocks in the ground. So you get this drainage thing that happens. And I'm on a north slope. So north slope tends to dry, stays wet longer, which is great. Takes the edge off of watering, but it takes the edge off of watering. It takes a while for it to drain. And the time I kill peonies, it's really this time of year. It's March and April when you get these heavy, wet snows. And they stay there on the ground and they just slowly dissolve and melt. And that soil stays so gooey. That month, 6 weeks worth of time when it's real wet, that's when the damage is done. Not so much in the summer. It's really in the winter months. So drainage. So for mine, I pretty much gave up growing my peony personally in the ground. I'm now in containers. I'm in raised beds where I can control the drainage mainly and a rich soil. So peonies, these are the oldest, some of the oldest plants that will live in your gardens. The average lifespan of a peony, easily 50 years. These are things you can pass down from generation to generation. I mean, people take a cutting and give them to family and friends, and they move to Prescott. I'm going to bring my peony from Iowa. I'm going to bring them with me. We hear those stories. They live that long. So this is something you want to put in the ground and someplace where it can stay because they're hard to move. They're big, fleshy root masses. And so it's a great foundation plant, especially towards the back side of the garden because they're going to get up pretty much knee-high or a little bit taller. So they're going to be 2 to 3 feet tall. It's a good anchoring plant in the flower garden further back, and these spill out over into things like this. Candy tuft. Mine isn't quite blooming yet. This is a perennial too. These are companion plants. Look how pretty that just goes together. Oh my gosh. This is a winter bloomer. Actually, I guess it's a spring bloomer since spring was last week, right? Yay! Of course, it's going to snow tomorrow, so that's spring and I know. This is an evergreen though. It keeps its foliage year round, and then it blooms like this. Pretty much April, May, first part of June. Candy tuft. Candy tuft is the name of it. Perennial. Again, comes back year after year. Again, I use these as foundation. This only gets about a foot tall. This gets about 3 feet tall. You can just birthday cake the layering in the flower beds. So the beauty with perennials, okay, they come back, is they come back. The negative with perennials, they don't bloom as long as annuals. So they're going to bloom about 6 weeks on average, most, not all, but generally speaking, most perennials are about a month and a half is their bloom cycle. Sometimes you can deadhead them or pinch off the spent flowers and get them to rebloom. Generally, you're planting several types of flowers that are perennials together. So something's always cycling through, something's always in bloom. So you're thinking spring, summer, fall. So I want my mums in the fall, I want my echinaceas in the summer, and I want my candy tuft in the spring, peonies in the spring. So you've always got something blooming. What I do is I'm not happy with that. I want more flowers more of the time. So I'll take these kinds of things and I'll add, what do I got here? What do I have, pansies? I thought I had pansies. Where am I at? Oh yeah, they're good. Ma'am, thank you. There's too much color, I can't even see. This is an annual. This is a winter bloomer. This is a mammoth pansy. So it's got the bigger flowers to it. And you're only going to find this at Waters Garden Center. You saw it here. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, so usually you'll have pansies that are a little bit smaller. This has got that big monkey face with the bigger flowers. So it's a special thing. We grow this just for the early spring. This will bloom like this nonstop until about middle of June. And then no matter how much you water it, it's going to die. It doesn't like the heat. It loves the cold. In fact, most folks plant this at the wrong time. I plant these mainly in autumn. So if you plant them in the fall, October, September, October, November, they're going to bloom nonstop through the winter, and then June they kind of take off. The mistake newbies make, new to the area, oh, I planted these in Phoenix. Oh, yeah, we love these. They come in and get that last crop in May, so 6 weeks from now, and they plant it and they go, oh, it died in 3 weeks because the summer hit. It doesn't like the heat. They got the last. Earlier is better for your winter blooming things. That goes for lily of the valley, all your winter bloomers. This is another one that's snapdragons. Every yard should have a snapdragon. This is a weed. It recedes, comes up. You never get just one. It comes back over and over and spreads. This is called orange rocket, orange flame. So see that color online? There you go. I'm glad you guys are tuned in. There we go. So this is live streamed through our YouTube channel, LinkedIn page, and some other place, Facebook, some other places. If ever you missed a class and you want to go back, or you're a note taker, you can go to our YouTube channel. It's been over 1 million downloads, people watching the classes and other informational stuff. But this is orange flame. It comes in yellow, pink, white. Snapdragons are bulletproof. And javelina, deer, rabbits, do they eat yours? Oh, they left mine alone. See, some of the herds read the manual and some don't read. They just eat no matter what. So they've been pretty good for me. So snapdragons, peonies. How do you plant them? So there's two ways. You're either going to amend the soil real heavily in your gardens, or plant it in a raised bed, and I'll share both of those, or a container. If you're going to plant them in, let me get this out of here. If you're going in the gardens, you think of them kind of like a rose, or you plant them like you would a tree or a shrub. This is a very long-term kind of plant. You're really taking the work into the energy of that hole, and then it's going to be there for, again, decades. You'll probably be moving out of your house before someone's going to inherit your peonies unless you take it with you. So amend the soil. Your soil is not good. Your soil is terrible. And so you're going to have to amend that. And I would say with peonies, it would be really critical to leave. Let's go this one. I would plant on a very slight mound if it's out there in the yard, let's say by the driveway or by the mailbox. I would leave maybe this much of the root out of the ground, and I'd slightly feather the soil around that. So, and then I put my watering mound or my irrigation on top of that. That way I can ensure at least this much of the root can breathe no matter how wet the environment gets. So slight mound. Whatever you do, don't put it at below grade where water gathers in pools. Don't do that. You're doomed. And then don't allow soil to touch any of this, or it will crown rot. Peonies want to rot. They want to die. They just want to die, and they're going to die from over wet to rotting kind of things. So this soil that you see here should be exposed to the air when you're done planting. Don't be generous and try to bury it a little deeper. It's not going to like that. Okay, so yeah. In a container planting as well. Yeah, container or in the ground. Great question. So in the ground right now, I would dig the hole about this wide, 3 times as wide, saucer shaped, or just dig 3 times as wide, because the roots are going to go like this out sideways, and they're going to clump, and you're going to get more peonies, or you get bigger mass. I would take the soil that's there and filter it. Some of you aren't going to have soil left because there's rocks and gunk and junk in there. Filter anything out that's bigger than maybe a large marble or a golf ball. Screen that stuff out of there because it heats up in summer, and those particles, they're too big to hold any water molecules. So you want to screen it down to smaller soils. Then what's left, you're going to add mulch, premium mulch. This is basically compost. It looks like dark mocha organic matter. What's going to do is it's going to keep that soil from compacting right back down into clay form. It's going to help the roots get through it easier. And mainly it's going to attract worms, mycorrhizal colony, all the good stuff in the soil that feeds off of organic matter. It's going to attract that. It's going to ignite the soil so the peonies just want to grow. About 25% mulch to your native soil, or about 1 shovel mulch to about 3 shovels of native soil, okay? You could cheat that up to about 50-50. After that, it's too much. It gets too gooey, too wet. This doesn't drain as well. It stays too wet. But up to about 50-50, if you hit a big rock or something, you need to add a little bit more. You could cheat it a little bit more, okay? If you need more than that, say you didn't dig out a rock, you dug out a boulder, you need filler. That's what topsoil is for. So topsoil is a heavier, it's made to actually fill in and help increase the soil mass, okay? So blend that all together, backfill that around your peony, and again, don't let soil keep this exposed to the air. I can't emphasize that enough. When you get all done, the soil's going to be right there, and then water it in. There you go. That's how you plant a peony. Class is over. Thank you for coming. Now, peonies are right down the way. No, there's more to it. Peonies are heavy feeders. It takes a lot of energy to create this much growth and then to bloom for 6 weeks with a dozen flowers. It takes a lot, not just lightweight miracle grow kind of stuff. We're talking meat and potato kind of plant foods. So when I'm all done planting that, I will add 744 all-purpose plant food. This is a good organic, natural food. I'll give it a good handful, sprinkle that around it. That way, every time you get water, irrigation, rain, snow, it's going to release just a little food over the next 3 months or so. That's critical with peonies. They really like to be fed consistently over a long period of time. For my peonies, I'll give it this probably at least 3 times a year, if not 4. So if you're thinking holidays, we're on one of the main holidays, Easter. Fertilize Easter, 4th of July, because the monsoons usually hit about Independence Day. That July, we're about to get rain. You fertilize right then, you can get a whole nother set of foliage growth, which the more foliage a peony has, the more sugars it can make, the more flowers you have next spring. It's all about photosynthesis. More foliage, the better. Halloween's probably the most important feeding for peonies. Anything that blooms in spring, that fall fertilizer is number 1. If you're going to skip all the others, just at least hit it Halloween is the most important feeding. And then I'll hit mine New Year's. I'm out there fertilizing the new year because we don't quite see foliage coming up yet. Usually my peonies started showing up in February. Is that when yours kind of showed up? You started seeing the eyes pop. Into January, you saw the eyes emerge, and February started to grow, and by March, end of March, they're up this tall. Yeah? Yeah. This is peonies we're talking about, right? So she planted a bunch of bulbs, and they haven't quite come up yet. Ooh, that might be a problem. They're probably dead at this point. It's just how many have peonies and they're already up out of the ground? Me too. If yours aren't up out of the ground yet, probably they didn't make it through the winter. Something happened. I don't know what. So fertilizer, I know where you can buy full-on plants. So perennials need to be, just so you know, perennials need to be 2 years old or older before they're old enough to bloom. So if you're planting bulbs, it's going to take minimum 2 years for them to actually, they won't bloom first year. If they do, they're real small, they're smaller flowers. The second year, they start to bloom better. Some of your bigger peonies, the more mature ones, they can be 5 years old before they're actually old enough to start blooming if they're a big perennial. That's why perennials are a little bit more expensive, because they're at the farm for at least 2 years. Whereas an annual, like a pansy, this is an 8-week crop. That's why Depot and Lowe's, the box stores, they crank out annuals. They don't like perennials because they're more expensive and they take so long to grow. Gardeners, we love perennials because they're just more variety to them. So, but as far as economics, so agribusiness, you want to turn the tables as fast as you can because you make more money. We're not all about money. We're about fun and excitement and fragrance, butterflies, hummingbirds, fairy dust. So we like perennials. For my friends, plant perennials. So they're worth the investment in the long term. Again, you're paying $50 for a peony, or 30, whatever this is. but it's good for 50 years. It's going to be there a long time. So, and an annual gets about this big. Peonies get about this big. They're going to mount about knee high, knee wide, full sun. More sun, the better, because you'll get more flowers. I would say at least 6 hours, 5 to 6 hours of sun would be the minimum I would give a peony to be able to bloom well. So think of it like a rose. A rose needs about that kind of thing. Go for 6 hours or more, and you'll get more flowers. Okay, so a lot of folks want to plant them in the shade. Then they start to elongate, they start to lean over, they're reaching for the sun, and they don't look as good. They won't be as full, they'll be lopsided. 6 hours or more will be better for peonies. Okay? Yeah, could you take this and just take a shovel and whack it down the middle and have two? You can do that. It won't bloom this year. Probably it would stress it out too much, and so transplant shock. But that is how you divide and share as it grows. This is probably too young to divide. Once it gets up about this big, then you take it. Then you can take a cutting, take a shovel through it, divide it, and plant others. Share it with friends. Give it to family members. So, yeah. So okay. Let's just go down that path. So peonies are perennials. They're going to look fabulous, even without flowers. They're beautiful. They got this nice ferny foliage to it. When they're done blooming, they have a seed head on them. Generally, I will cut that off. It's kind of ugly. I want the foliage. When it's done blooming, move aside. I want to see the foliage. So I'll take that flower, I'll just go down as far as I can. I'll just snip it off, and I keep the foliage in place. As much foliage as you can have, because it's creating next spring's flowers through this year's foliage. So I want as much foliage as I can get. In the fall, usually about October, November for sure, it turns to this straw color. So if you go from this green foliage or purple foliage to just, it's dead, like a tomato, or it's just dead foliage. I personally will keep that foliage up there as long as I can. Generally through January, because I'm using the foliage to protect or insulate the core of the plant. If we get a major harsh cold, which can happen about every 10 years, it goes sub-zero, it's really brutal. It can damage some of your roots. If you keep that foliage up, it insulates itself. But eventually in January, the snows come and it just gets everything to lay down. It just looks terrible. At that point, you're not ever allowed to look terrible in my gardens. I'm gonna cut you off. And so in January, I'm just gonna cut it back to the stubs, as close as I can to the ground. Doesn't matter, lawnmower, weed whacker height, whatever. Just cut it back. And then I'll fertilize it, usually with the 744, as soon as I get done with that, because I know within a few weeks, I'm starting to see the eyes come up, and we're starting that process of spring again. So some folks cut back the foliage too soon, and it does some damage to next year's flowers. You want this, as long as it's got fleshy foliage to it, soft, supple foliage, it's going to create the sugars. So to make the flowers, it's going to store that up in the roots, okay? Yeah. Yeah. So would I put mulch on top of it to protect it? You can. I like to top dress my gardens anyway, because it helps with the health of the soil, and it also insulates the plants. I'm going to add some of that. It could be topsoil, could be, I generally wouldn't use manures on peonies. You could, but again, they want to rot, and manures feed some of that rotting effect. So manures are made for other things. So trees, shrubs, lawns. I would use just compost for this, or potting soil. Works really well.
Would that be the same for peony in a pot?
For a peony in a pot, it's different. Yeah, I grow peonies in pots, so in a container. So what you do there, now containers are actually almost like cheating. It's too easy. So it is, because you've just got, you can control the entire environment. Whereas in the ground, you got variables like where the water's coming off the golf course, how the water's flowing down your driveway, what's dumping off the cars from your kids' friends leak everything, and now it's going into your gardens. There's all kinds of variables. A container, none of that. You can control it all. And so with that, you are using straight potting soil. That's this one. Potting soil is the science of soils. So this is just compost. Yeah, we compost it for a little bit longer. We screen it down tighter than you'd find at a box store. It's a nice quality product, but there's no science behind it. You can't measure the pH. And this is actually a recipe, like a cookie recipe for soils. It's got so much peat moss, so much compost, so much perlite. The recipe is consistent every time, and it's made to grow things here in pots or raised beds. That's what this is for, pots and raised beds. It's a little bit more expensive because you're using better ingredients in here. It's got a 555 organic fertilizer in there. It's got all the stuff you'd want to grow, and peony love it. This is for peonies. You're going to root right out into this. If you're doing tomatoes, other flowers, this is our growers mix. This is what we start the cuttings and the seed in. So if you simply give a plant more of what it's known its entire life, it's just going to go bonkers. It's going to grow like crazy. Plants do not like different soils. They want consistency. It's like you walking out of an airplane at Phoenix Sky Harbor in July. What's the first thing you do when you walk out of the plane? Oh my gosh, this is crazy. Who would live here? This is nuts. As you go into air conditioning. Plants do that with the soil. They're going, oh my gosh, why would anyone grow here? So they like consistent, the same all the time. That's any plants like that, but especially your flowering things. They really like consistency, okay? That's why when you're blending that soil, mulching native soil, blend it so it's consistent in the backfill. This, you just fill the pot up right to the top, plant your plant. That's all you do. There's no blending, mixing, or anything else. If you've got big pots, so my really big pots, I'll use a perennial to anchor it, and then I'll accessorize with flowering like annuals. So I get that color. Annuals bloom nonstop the entire year, and then they die in the winter, typically. The marigolds, geraniums, zinnias, you name it, petunias. These are all annual flowers. Nothing blooms like them. But I'll use the anchoring of the perennials and I'll accessorize with my annuals, okay? Yes?
You're talking about soil. On a raised bed, what would you amend with that?
So in a raised bed, which one would I amend with? This or this? If it's a raised bed or container, I use this. And I'm always trying to take out, let's say an annual that died last year. I'm trying to take out as much of that root as I can. I'm trying to make room for more of this. I'll dig that out and I add that to my compost bowl. I throw it over there where it's not as important. And I want to make room for additional potting soil. This is what to do. This is the magic. If you've got a big raised bed, you need to fill it. This can be expensive. If you're going to fill up, you need 20 square feet of potting soil. What you might do is get a filler with the garden soils from any bulk place. Everyone has a garden soil. It's terrible stuff, but it does drain. That's all it's got. It's basically, they dug out a stock tank, they added some wood chips. That's a garden soil. You don't want to grow in it. But I would use it to fill up the bulk, and I would take the top layer of that big raised bed. So you're using timbers or blocks or something. And I would take the top 8 to 12 inches of that bed. I would just do this. I wouldn't blend it. I would just add this on top of that filler, and now you'll have garden success like now, like immediately. You'll see it. So that's how I would do it. So if you've struggled, it's because of soil typically, or the soil's not draining very well. If you've got plants like, I brought this up just as a lesson real quick. So you're seeing, here's a couple. These are lilacs. We are famous for our lilacs. They do really well here. I mean, there's some ancient, some really old ones. They're magnificent. We can grow them almost better than the Midwest can because we don't have the disease stuff. We don't have that humidity. We don't get the leaf spot that some of the other places get. We don't get the powdery mildew as much. They're just easy to grow here. And they love sun, they love wind, they take our alkaline soil. Lilacs grow well. Here's the thing that happens. We get a new person coming in and going, oh, I remember my grandmother's lilacs and I want one too. And they plant one, they're just so happy for a couple of years. 3, 4, 5 years in, the lilacs stop blooming. Why? Your peonies can do the same thing. They stop blooming. It's a food thing. They used up, so you planted the lilac just like you would a peony, 3 times the width, same depth, at soil level, lots of compost. You're really enriching the soil. You add some fertilizer, and it just goes bonkers for a couple of years. And then it runs out of that soil that you amended. It just runs out of nutrients. So you need to fertilize these things that bloom. You need to fertilize them pretty regularly. This is a heavy feeder. This thing is going to be as tall as I am and loaded. I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens of flowers. It takes a lot of energy to keep this thing going. So there's a theme going on here. This is the stuff for a blooming thing. This is cottonseed meal, bird guano, some sulfur. It's got all the magic. It's made for here. This is what you'd use 4 times a year. The most important feeding for anything in spring is Halloween. The fall fertilizer. When you see the mums in bloom, the aspens have turned gold. You're seeing that the maples are all red. That's your cue. Oh, I should fertilize my spring blooming things. Crab apples, purple leaf plums, peonies, all these forsythia, fertilize then, and you'll get better flowers in the spring. Because it's using that food to form that through winter, it's forming the flowers. It's using that food to form the flowers. So this is the stuff. For the love of gardening, please get rid of that Miracle Grow box. It's not helping you. Miracle Grow is not your friend. It is the #1 selling fertilizer in the country, but it's very expensive if you use it the way you should use it, like every 2 weeks. And it's salt-based. We already have enough minerals in our soil, in our water. It clogs up the pores. Don't use Miracle Grow. Skip that. Go to the all-purpose plant food. It will make a difference. So, okay, fertilizer. I brought this just because now's the time. Not quite open. I grow white lilacs because I find they're more fragrant. They just have this aroma that's so rich. Purple also works too. Purple's yeah. Generally, they leave them alone. Pigs for sure leave them alone. Deer, I've had a deer graze on mine a couple. They don't like them. They I think they're bored as they're walking through the gardens, and they nibble on them, and then they leave them alone. So generally, they'll leave them alone. So I would say, okay. I've even had good luck with elk. So elk will leave them alone. So anyway, most herds read the list. But obviously, one of you had snapdragons. Ate your snapdragons. There you go. Yeah. They're starting to leaf. They're getting close. Depends on your elevation and your sun exposure. What you're finding right now, have you noticed, throughout your neighborhood, some plants are like 2 weeks ahead of others. It's going to be that east and south gardens bloom sooner than the north and west sides, which are cooler. It's not so much elevation. It's not, oh, I live in Groom Creek, mine are soon. No, it's about exposure to the sun. When does it get to see the morning sun? You're seeing that on some of your trees. So some of the trees are blooming on this side, and it's like a week later, it blooms the other side. The whole thing's not blooming all at once. Kind of weird. That could be sun, and there's a bit of stress to the plant. There's something going on in the soil. So the plant is talking to you, saying, oh, if you see that, come talk to us. We want to help you save that plant and have it bloom better. But you're seeing some of that exposure change, especially you walk neighborhoods. Some plant, what's wrong with mine? They've been blooming for 2 weeks. What's going on? And then we start to take off. Usually there's going to be a sun exposure thing, okay? So we came back to containers. Just plant directly in this. Obviously, if it's in a container, it's going to be there for a long time. Get a nice pretty pot, because in the winter, it is going to be dead looking. It's a perennial. It's hibernating underground. The cold, it does not matter. So peonies will go down to about minus 40 degrees. We will never see that kind of cold ever. So to have it in a pot and exposed to cold, not a big deal. It doesn't care. It's mainly going to be how's it look in the winter, not so good. So your pot kind of brings out the color. It makes it pretty. So I've got a beautiful oxblood red pot with my Ito peony in it, and it's glorious. And it's parked out there away from the house because it's kind of ugly in the winter. And then when it's going into bloom, we bring it right up close to the front door. We just have it right there for all to witness and see, because you just want to smell it. Peony smells magnificent. And so I'll plant it directly in this and nothing else. Then I'll fertilize it with the all-purpose plant food 2 times a year. I just sprinkle that on top, and it's like magic stuff. It really, really works. Yeah. So let's go over foods. It's time to fertilize. Fertilize everything in the yard with this right now. I mean, lawns to flowers, trees, shrubs, fertilize right now with this. It goes right through the rock, right through the fabric. It'll finally break down and go through the soil band or the drip line of that plant. It will break down and become available over the next quite a few weeks. In addition to my spring blooming thing, so I'm a flower grower. Here's an insider tip. You brought it up, superphosphate. You're obviously a gardener as well. So if you know about this, you are a gardener. This is 0-18-0. Remember, nitrogen, phosphorus, potash. Nitrogen is foliage mass. You want more leaves, bigger leaves, more of it? Nitrogen. Phosphorus is for roots and blooms. If you want more flowers, bigger tomatoes, you want more of the fruiting, flowering stuff, give it that middle number. And potash is like ash from like your grill, your fireplace. That's for disease resistance. That's the stem thickness, the how thick the leaves are, how robust it is, okay? We really don't need very much potash, because we're growing in ash already. I mean, Thumb Butte is a volcano core. All the ash that was around that volcano is now washed out. Now we're gardening in that. So you don't really need a lot of potash in our gardens. We do need a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus. So this is 0-18-0. It's all that middle number for flowers. What I'll do is I treat this kind of like a Snickers bar. You're thinking my plants need a snack. I want to do something. I already fertilized a couple months ago. I want to keep them blooming, or they're done blooming. I deadhead them. I want them to go back another flush of let's say roses. I want to repeat bloom. I'll chuck a handful of this at the base of the plant. The plant it'll take it up and it will go right back into bloom. I could probably dip my hat in this and it would start to bloom. It just works. It works that easy. Not really. But it does bring out better flower size, more flowers, better color of the flowers, more fragrance. That's what this does. So I'll treat this. And if you search the internet, they make this so complicated. You got to work it in or it doesn't dissolve. Just get it on the plant. I don't work it in. I'm the world's laziest gardener. I just put it on there and I expect nature to do all the work for me. And so I just treat this. I probably do this more often than I do this during the growing season, just to get it to repeat bloom. Again, everyone grows autumn sage or Salvia greggii. That's the one that shrub about this tall, gets red flowers. Hummingbirds love it. We all grow that, but mine bloom better than yours because I'm treating it with this more often, so it just gets to have more flowers. Probably every other month or so. Every 6-8 weeks, I'll give it a little handful. If I know a storm's coming, I chuck it out there so the rains can kind of help me to take this in. So I just spread some poppy seed out because I think this next storm is the last chance we get to actually have wildflowers. I mean, a good chance. I mean, like every seed is going to germinate and take off. So I spread some poppy seeds out there in a big space because I'm taking advantage of this next storm that's coming. I purposely did a couple days ago, just preparing for this. Or you can just buy this plant. This is the regular, this is a perennial. Actually, technically, this is an annual. This comes back from other seed. It doesn't come back from the same root, or rarely, but it reseeds so prevalently that you think it's a perennial. It actually will die back. It doesn't come back from the same plant. It comes back for more seed. You don't just get one, you get like a whole field now. The seeds spill over down the driveway, and you get these waves of poppies. The hills will be alive here in a few weeks. The poppies. This is the native here. And animals don't eat this, since deer and rabbits are a theme with the crowd on this side of the crowd. California poppies. What else? Food, drainage, potting soil, or in the ground. Either way, make sure the soil, the roots are not touching. Flower power, yeah. Sounds like I have a fan, the flower power. Thank you very much. So this is the competitor. What I had, so 10, 15 years ago, maybe longer. I lose track. I've been doing this for 32 years. I'm a flower grower. I love to figure out how to get plants to be healthier and bloom stronger. And so I was selling Miracle-Gro. Number one seller, you just sack it high, watch it fly. Classic retail, easy money. I kept having customers come back on, my plants are dying, something's going on, what's happening? We'd analyze it down, it was always Miracle-Gro. They were using Miracle-Gro. It was causing issues. I said, I'm not gonna sell something that does more damage than good. And so I gave it up like 15 years ago, which is it's like my vendors were going, you're crazy, what are you doing? I'm not gonna sell my customers something that is gonna damage their plants. So I got rid of that, but I had to come up with an alternative. I came up with Flower Power. We make this ourselves. This is 12-48-8, 48%. It's as high as I could go on phosphorus and still keep it liquid form. After that, it starts to settle. It's not as liquid. It's available like now, like instantly flowering like now, 48%. So if you're doing hanging baskets, anything you want more flowers, here's an insider tip for me, one gardener to another. We like to entertain. But when people come into our backyard, they're judging our gardens. You have a company party, they're gonna look to see how your gardens are. About 2 weeks ahead, before I have that party, a wedding, a gathering, family coming over, 2 weeks before, I'll deadhead, clean everything up. I give everything Flower Power, and within 2 weeks, things are spectacular. Going, oh my gosh, Ken, you're such a gardener. Yeah, I know, Flower Power. That's what it does. It's not salt-based. It's not going to clog up the pores. It's actually going to work with the plants, work with our water, not against it. But this is different. This is my core. This makes everything go consistently. I want it to be spectacular for the party. I want it to be over the top. I'll supplement with this. So about once a month, I feed this. And every 2 to 3 months, I give my flowers this. You do those two things, over the top. If you're doing this, probably, how do I do? Now I'm complicating things. So I use this, mainly I use this on my flowering shrubs and trees, maybe my bigger perennials, and I use it mainly in the spring. For my containers, things I'm blooming, I love to deadhead flowers. It's a sickness. I love sipping in the morning, my coffee, and deadheading flowers. It's therapy. It's therapy for me. I like it. And so I deadhead my flowers, and those plants that I like to deadhead, they tend to be consistent with this. Those are usually your smaller things. Annuals like this. Perennials are probably happier with this combo here. Annuals are much happier with this because it's 48%, just makes them bloom like now. Probably too liquid for trees and shrubs. Trees and shrubs have such a massive root mass. They would rather have more consistency. So I don't want to make it confusing. Some of this is gardening, just playing with it. And you're all are gardeners. You're here for a peony class of all things. Special. I thought no one's going to show up for one plant peonies, but this really does work. Yeah. Oh. She's saying this is perfect for water. People that just love to water.
Yes.
This is like perfect. I just want to water things. Add a little bit. It's a couple tablespoons and a gallon of water. Just give your plant, make them happy. They do respond immediately to this. Greens them up and mainly helps them to set more flowers and deeper roots. In the back. Go ahead. So what was that one more time? Oh, watering. How often should you water? Yeah. So in potting soil, it's usually going to be a raised bed or something that drains faster. You'll probably have to water a little bit more often. So I'm watering mine probably, right now it's about every 10 days. It's not very often. In fact, I should probably up the watering. As soon as the storm's gone, as soon as we get closer to 70 degrees, you need to activate your irrigation. Be more diligent. Or as soon as things are in bloom, they take more water. So if you let them go dry while they're in bloom, they'll stress out. They'll shed their flowers to keep the heart of the plant alive. So there, I might be probably watering my peonies in a container once a week, maybe every 5 to 7 days. As we get into the heat of June, like it's 95 degrees, it's hot, and it's dry, I might be watering every day if it's a container. In the ground, it's much easier. There, I would treat it probably like I would a rose or a lilac, maybe once a week, twice a week at most. I would water my plants because usually you're using drip irrigation. So you're leaving that system on for a long time and you're pushing that water deep down into the soil. So it's going to take a while for that to dry out. So I'd water less often in the ground, more often in containers, but you all already know this. And I can only get you close. That's how I do it in my yard. Yours is going to tweak by a day or two. You can change it. But if you're in doubt, leave your peonies out because they're going to get overwatered. If you give them too much, they'll rot. So I treat them like I would a rose. A rose needs water about once a week, maybe twice, and that's good enough. Yeah. Oh, good. What size pot do you grow in a container? So I would say a minimum. So English peonies are a little bit smaller. Let's go. Yeah, this English peony. This is the smaller of the two. So you got Ito peonies and English peonies. I would say minimum would be about 14-inch, something like that. And if you go bigger, the more soil, the better, because more soil equals more water holding capacity. It's a sponge. So it'll take the pressure off in summer. So you won't have to water as often. For my Ito peony, I went bigger. I went to like 18, 20-inch. And it's taller because I wanted it to, that was a proportion thing. I want it to be, it's a big plant. A big plant in a small pot looks funny. So it needs to be proportionally looking better. So I'd go at least 18-inch, about that deep. Ito, I-T-O-H. Can I show off one of yours? Could you show? Yeah, no, I'll just show it off. We'll get more. So Ito, so this is English. We'll show you an Ito, which is that's one where you graft an English peony onto a tree peony, and it looks like, you can just tell it looks like it's on steroids. Right there, perfect. Can you see the difference? This is probably 3 years old. This is 5 years, 5 or 6 years. So this will be 3 times the size of an English. It's just way bigger plant. Same flower, but more fragrance because the flowers are bigger. You get the exotic colors because these are more pom-pommed, and it's just different. If you're a collector of peonies, you kind of want one of each or several of each. So Ito, I-T-O-H, which is a Japanese creator made it. They are brilliant gardeners. Asians are brilliant gardeners, but they created this one. So, ants. That's a myth. So ants, you got to have ants or the peonies won't open. That is not true. Totally false. Ants love the taste of peonies, so they like the taste. So they go up to suck on the nectar. I don't like ants in my garden, so I kill them. So I don't want ants on my plants. It's just wrong. I spray them with this triple action. Well, he shouldn't use so much. He's one of these. Stronger is better. More is better. So your husband sprayed the peonies and killed them. I know where you can get more. Have him come over and get you a gift card or something. This is my first line defense for all my flowers and vegetables. This is where I start. This is neem oil, N-E-E-M, neem. It's completely organic, so it's safer for you, safer for your pets, safer for your butterflies and hummingbirds, especially with flowers. This is the way to go. This will kill off everything except the big, like grasshoppers. Then you're just basically hitting over the head, but it's not the liquid. Then aphids, ciliads, thrip, and it's got a preventing effect to it. And it's not going to damage my dogs and the wildlife, butterflies and hummingbirds. Okay, so this is where I go, and it'll take out ants. It seems to be the smaller ants. Red ants don't care about peonies. It's the small ones. They crawl up the stems. That is a total myth. You must have ants or you won't have peonies. That is not true because I don't allow ants. I don't want ants. I don't want flies. I don't want wasps. I don't want mosquitoes. How often is the question? I would spray this as I see a problem. I'm not big into spraying things as a preventative. I kind of want, that's too much spraying. That's what your grandparents did. They, every 2 weeks they sprayed DDT out in the gardens, just faithfully. I kind of go as I need it. I'll spray then. And it won't be that often. We're starting to see some aphids show up now. So leading edge, they're mainly on the yuccas we're finding. So we're seeing a few of those. It will get worse. I predict after this next storm, wildflowers are going to go crazy, and so will the bugs. And it'll start with thrip and aphids. We'll start. That's kind of where you start. Yeah. Grubs. That's bad. Yeah. Yeah. Were they good? You fry them up, a little garlic butter. So she's got grubs. She dug up in the gardens. These white worms showed up, and they're eating the roots on your plants. They can actually keep plants from blooming. They can actually kill things if bad enough. I've seen locust rhododendrons fall over in the wind because the roots were completely eaten by grubs. If you have that, you need to put a grub killer down. Good. That's what you do. So it's strong stuff, and don't go light on it. You've got a problem. I would go grub killer. There's one that's called grub killer. Don't go with diatomaceous earths and these other things. Don't. Grub killer will take them out. It's granular, so you sprinkle it on the ground like a fertilizer, water it in, it goes through the soil band and kills them off. And like I've got certain areas in my garden where they seem to congregate. So a grub is a larva stage of a beetle. So the summer beetles you see flying around, they live 2 to 5 years, depending on the variety, in the ground as a grub. And then they come up to do one thing, make whoopee, and lay more eggs with other beetles out in the yard. And there's a certain area underneath my juniper trees where they just they go after every year. I just have them. That's where they tend to mate and make more grubs. And so for me, I just spread grub killer in that part of the gardens every year. Even if I don't see them, I just know I'm going to. So they're going to come. And so it eliminates my problems. So that might be a case for you. Oh yeah, we should do that too. Did you already passed out the handout? Perfect. So there's 3 handouts I'm giving you at this class. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you. How to grow peonies. There you go. You already seen that in the right-hand side, just in the comments. Just hit the link. You got it. Okay. Also, while you're there, hit like, subscribe, make a comment, because it really helps us out on YouTube. Google ranks us much higher if you do that. I appreciate it. How to grow peonies. What we've just covered is right here. Get rid of this one. So all the things we just discussed, you'll have this in your inbox this afternoon. I've got tomorrow's article that will be in the newspaper going out to our garden club members. It's the 10 most fragrant roses. I figure peonies and rose gardeners are sort of in the same vein. I thought I would give you that one as well. So that'll be tomorrow's article. You'll be first line Friday. Depends on, thank you. You're part of the club. Right on. Good. Gotcha. That's right. So it's published in the Courier, Signals, E-News, Prescott E-News. It's kind of, this is my garden article. The beauty with my article from my desktop to yours is the embedded links are actually live. You can actually go deeper if you so choose. Whereas newspaper, I love it, is so 1960s, but there's no links, unless you get in the digital copy, and the editor deletes all my digital links. They go, no value. We live in today's digital world. You've got to be kidding me. Why would you do that? Anyway, you get the actual live article from my desktop to yours. I'll give both of those to you here this afternoon. There was one other I was going to send you, but we'll kind of go from there. Put your name on the clipboard, and you'll have that this afternoon. Okay. What's that? Oh, companion plants of April. That's the other one. So this is the last day of March, or last weekend. Monday is April 1st, right? Just kidding. April Fools. No. We put together a list of companions every year for each month. And this April's companion plants, things that look good together. It starts with Purpley Plum because they've been in bloom for 2 weeks already. That's that pink blooming flower that's out. I noticed that the Bradford pears just opened. That's the one that's white blooming. Depends on where you're at in town, but there's a white blooming tree. That's ornamental pear or Bradford pear. And then peonies are part of it. California poppies. This is a definite April flower. Looks good together. This will be part of it. This is candy tuft. Great perennial. Looks good every April. You can count on it. It's going to bloom. What else? I brought this one only because I went down and saw it and went, oh, that's pretty neat. This is a white blooming wisteria. Wisteria is always purple. To see white, super unusual, and only available at Waters Garden Center. Yeah, you've been brainwashed. That's good. That's good. I brought this one too. This is one you'll find now. This is a hardy gardenia. So it's just started to open. It's got that gardenia smell. Most gardenias do not grow up here. It's too cold. There's 2 varieties that do exceptionally well. I grow these in containers so that I can have this evergreen shrub close to where I like to sit and drink my coffee and watch the hummingbirds. It's just, I want the fragrance right there, not out in the garden. I want it right here. And it looks pretty in a container because it's just neat, clean, no real maintenance, just nice mounding evergreen plant. Takes a little bit of shade to keep it blooming in June, but not that much shade. Just kind of, I notice it blooms longer. I put it on my west and east exposure kind of gardens. That midday sun, in June, it stops blooming for a while. You can keep it blooming, but just here, this is where that flower power. Oh, in a container with this, you will have more flowers you've ever seen. Oh my gosh. These 2 things go together.
So if you have this sun until about noon.
Noon or 1 would be fine. It'd be perfect. Yeah, it'd be perfect. Was there another question? Was that? Deer, I don't know. Anyone have experience with gardenias and deer? I don't think they're going to bother them. I know javelina leave them alone because that's my bane. Javelina, they love roaming the gardens. I've got it right out there where they can get to it. They're fine. So my guess is probably deer and rabbits be good too.
It survives the winter?
Survives the winter. This one does. Yeah, this goes down to like -10. It's -10. This is Sweet Star. Sweet Star gardenia just grows here. Grows Sweet Star. There's several of them down there. I just brought it because the first flower just opened today. This morning just opened up. So exciting. Spring's here. What else? This is another companion. These are columbine. So this is our native wildflower up in the mountains. So the yellow one is a native, especially up towards Flagstaff, that area. But we're introducing more colors so you can have some real fun. More of a shade plant. than a sun plant. It'll take a lot of sun, but that midday, treat it like you would a gardenia, and you'd be fine. Okay? And now's the time you're going to see these things. I brought this as a lesson. In 2 weeks, we're going to have our vegetable class. It will be standing room only. There'll be 100 people here. It'll be nuts. It's so exciting because we're at the leading edge of planting season. Right now, I brought peas for you because this is a early spring plant. It likes the colder climate. It's going to do fine with this. It likes the colder. Beans are a summer plant. They don't like the spring. They like the summer. I brought it as a lesson going, okay, plant your beans when you're planting your cucumbers and squash and the summer blooming, fruiting things. Plant your peas when you're planting your leafy things, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, lettuce, spinach. If you're harvesting the flower or the foliage, those are early spring. You plant them now. If you're picking the fruit off, pumpkins and eggplants, so those are summer things. Typically, you're planting those after Mother's Day or at the end of April, first part of May, and then you're really worried about frost all the time. So I just brought it as a lesson for you going, the class is coming in 2 weeks. We'll go over deep into that. We'll have the vegetable planting calendar for you. When do you plant carrots? When do you plant? When do you plant and how? But for now, just for my friends, don't plant tomatoes yet. I know you're tempted. Don't do it. It's going to frost for sure. Wait a couple weeks, then do it. So, but peas would be fine. Lettuce, spinach, the things we have now, you're good. Okay. Herbs. I think herbs you can plant now, except basil, cilantro. Those two. If you look at those things cold, they die. They like summer. But rosemary, lavender, thyme, oregano, parsley, they're all good to go now. So you can plant them right now. You're seeing my rosemary is in bloom in my gardens right now. They're beautiful. Bees are all over them because they're foraging. They're hungry. There's not that much in bloom for them, so they're using this as a main pollinator source. So anyway, what else did I bring? I think that's all I had for the class. We covered food, how to get them to grow, don't overwater them, more sun. That's all good. One last, I'll leave you with this. This is a new euphorbia that's out. So this is called Miner's Merlot. This is related to gopher plant or gopher spurge. That's been in bloom. So my gopher plant is probably this big around. It's covered in yellow flowers right now. It's got blue foliage, sort of like this. Kind of has more spiky, needly kind of, not needly, spiky, pointed foliage to it. The rumor is if you plant a gopher plant, it will keep gophers out of your gardens. That is not true. They won't eat that one plant, but there's no repelling action. I've seen gophers pop up right next to it. This is related to that plant. It's got the same milky sap to it. When you break the sap, break a stem, it's got the white sap that oozes out, which means animals don't like the taste. It's a defensive thing that euphorbias do to keep the animals off. It does put a funky flower on. It's kind of yellow. It's like a Dr. Seuss looking flower. It's kind of cool. But really, it's an evergreen perennial. Gets up about this tall, kind of vase-shaped. And just to see purple is very unusual. Usually it's becoming green or yellow. To see this Merlot color, super crazy unusual. And again, only available literally at Lost Garden Center. Because we like plants. It's perennial. It's a great plant. With that, I will hang out as long as you want, answer questions, come look at plants. I'll just be here. We can talk gardener to gardener. But before I let you go, I'll let you clap because it makes me feel better. Thanks for tuning in, you guys.